Lecture B. This will be the last lecture for Chapter 15, dealing with what is freedom. Yesterday we ended with the 14th Amendment, and talking about the origins of the civil rights. Now we're going to get into the Reconstruction Act. So Johnson went on a speaking tour of the North and made wild accusations against radicals were planning to assassinate him, kind of lost his mind a little bit. At Johnson's ignorance, all the southern states but Tennessee refused to ratify origins of the 14th Amendment. Reconstruction Act, radical Reconstruction, we passed in March of 1867. What you're going to see is the president's going to lose complete control, and basically Congress is going to do what they want because Johnson's not going to be deemed competent or fit to carry out Reconstruction. This is going to lead to the impeachment and the election of Grant. Tenure of Office Act, barring the president from removing certain office holders, including cabinet members, without the consent of the Senate. Johnson will fire Secretary of War Edwin M. Stanton, a holdover from Lincoln's administration. Articles of impeachment will be brought. 35 to 19, though, will fail to remove him from office. So he will be impeached by the House, where the Republicans had a supermajority, but will be failed to be brought removed from office. And I think it failed by one vote, if I remember right. It had to require 2/3 to remove him from office. So Johnson will kind of be ineffective and really not important the last year in office. This is going to lead to the rise of Grant. Grant was nominated for the Republican president of 1868. They really needed to find someone that could bring the party together and move the country forward. It was a bitter election, though. The Democrats openly appealed to racism, and obviously the first open election after the Civil War is going to be a lot of grievances still and a lot of things realized that like the South is going to try to cling to. And though being the open racism and being one of the biggest things. The 15th Amendment we passed. Grant won the election by only 300,000 votes. Obviously, there's still deep divisions within the country. The 15th Amendment will prohibit the federal and state governments from denying any citizen the right to vote because of race. Sorry, women, you will not be able to vote yet, but this will give all men, regardless of race, the ability to vote. You'll have the Great Constitutional Revolution. Expansion of rights for not only whites but blacks as well, redefine the role of national government in the states, and we're looking at what we often call the Civil War amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, which abolish slavery, the definition of citizenship, and the expansion of voting rights for all men. Rights of women. Women tried to join the transformation movement, but women did not gain any more rights really until the 20th century when you have the progressive movement. So there's a huge change that happens between 1865 and 1868, and this is a constitutional revolution. There's 3 significant amendments passed, but not everyone's going to be happy with the changes, and not everyone will be able to partake, like for example women. Now, radical Reconstruction in the South, the tocsin of freedom. Blacks were content on nothing less than equality across the board, which makes sense after their bondage and everything. Thousands will register to vote, which is a great thing. By 1870, all former Confederate states would be reintroduced into the Union under Reconstruction. The new state constitutions drafted in 1868 and 69 were first with substantial black representation. You're going to have the first black office holders come about as well. The black office holder, black voters, provided the bulk of Republican Party support, especially in the South. Some 2,000 African Americans held public office during Reconstruction. Hiram Revels became the first black senator in American history. In South Carolina and Louisiana, most prominent Reconstruction office holders had never, had experienced slavery. So there's going to even be some division within the African Americans and blacks that will take office. Some of them had been in slavery. Some of them, not all of them, were exposed to that or been part of that. So there's going to be even some division among the minorities. Now, going to radical Reconstruction in the South, going to carpetbaggers and scallywags, a fun term that we often like to use. Carpetbaggers are those who came from the North to the South to try to influence Southern politics. Thus, the carpetbaggers, the bags they carried on them, made a carpet. They will come to the South trying to influence Southern politics. The other one, scallywag, is referring to Southerners who openly worked with and greeted those Northerner carpetbaggers or tried to work with African Americans and try to bring Reconstruction about. So scallywag's kind of a derogatory term of meaning someone they don't like that's in the South. Kind of think of scoundrel or whatever. And so these two groups of people will not be well liked or well welcomed in the South. Southern Republicans in power. Perhaps the greatest achievement of Reconstruction government was the establishment of the South's first state-supported public schools. The new governments also pioneered civil rights legislation and took steps to strengthen the position of rural laborers and promote South's economic recovery. So you're going to see the fundamental upheaval of the feudalistic society begin in the South. Now the quest for prosperity. Pinned hopes on regional economic development and general economic development remained weak. However, for the first time, biracial democratic governments are formed across the country, and especially in the South. Now the overthrow of Reconstruction. Reconstruction's opponents, South's traditional leaders bitterly opposed this for obvious reasons. High taxes also led to resistance. Couldn't stand former slaves voting and making decisions, holding office, and enjoying equality before the law. Thus, the Southerners are going to launch a campaign of violence, which is going to lead to a reign of terror. It was mostly local and supremely unorganized, but this is where you're going to have secret groups such as the Klan, the KKK, a terror group as it was formed. They will attack Republicans, whites, and blacks. Enforcement Act of 1870-1871 outlawing terrorist societies and allowing the president to use the army against them. In 1872, the Klan will be driven out. Peace reigned in most of the South after that for a period. So the Klan is very short-lived as far as its tyrannical terror reign. It will come back, and it still exists today, but its reign of terror for a few short years and few short moments in history will come and go. The whole idea is to try to intimidate Republicans and Southerners, or Southern blacks, from using their new liberties. Liberal Republicans committed to Reconstruction started to wane in the North during the 1870s. Corruption in the Grant administration helped create the liberal Republicans. Also, blacks in the South need to solve their own problems. The Civil War is long done now, at least closing in on a decade. By the mid-1870s, nominated Horace Greeley for president, badly beaten by Grant in 1872. But you can see that people are ready to move on. But brought attention to a new policy for the South, the North's retreat. The prostrate state and infantry will account a visit to the South depicted a state engulfed with political corruption and drained by extravagances under the control of black barbarism, as it was called. There'll be an economic, basically now they're depicting the result of African Americans being freed is that now the blacks are treating the whites so poorly. In 1873, economic depression will hit. Democrats will regain control of the House in 1874, so you start to see the economy have some problems. The Civil Rights Act of 1875 outlawed racial discrimination in place of public accommodation like hotels and theaters. But you'll have the Slaughterhouse case of 1873. Supreme Court ruled that the 14th Amendment had not altered traditional federalism and the power of the states to control such things. United States versus Cruikshank, the court gutted the Enforcement Acts, and thus you're going to start to see challenges to the government and to Reconstruction. Now, you're going to have, moving on to overthrow of Reconstruction 3, the triumph of Redeemers. Victorious Democrats called themselves Redeemers, redeemed the white South, returned back to the old ways. Where Reconstruction governments survived, violence again erupted. Grant administration this time showed no willingness to intervene, and people were tired of dealing with Southern problems. In 1875, Democrats ended Reconstruction in Mississippi, and the disputed election in the bargain of 1877. So, Rutherford B. Hayes, Republican versus Samuel Tilden, a Democrat. There was no clear winner. 3 states' elections were disputed: South Carolina, Louisiana, and Florida. Electoral Commission set up to decide, but there's going to be a bargain. Hayes becomes president, so Republican remains in power. Reconstruction will come to an end, and Democrats will honor bloc equality. This is the bargain. The first 2 things will be successful. Hayes will become president. Reconstruction ends, but Democrats will fail to honor black equality in the South. However, though, most of the North are ready to be done with Reconstruction. The end of Reconstruction. During Reconstruction, black says the government's expanded. Black rights did expand, though some would lose rights after it ended, especially in the South. With the black codes came and gone, but now you're going to have Jim Crow laws. Then you'll have the rise of segregation and everything. So Reconstruction comes to an end in 1877. Despite its limitations, it was a remarkable chapter in the story of American freedom, and you do have some substantial changes occur in the American government, society, and how things go about. So as we wrap up chapter 15 here and looking at the end of this, you could see that the election, if you go through the PowerPoint, of 1876 was super close. And This is one of the cases where the House had to step in. But this bargain really showed that the country was still heavily split, but at the same time, the country was ready to move on. Civil War is long done. The ghosts of the past are dead. Blacks are free, and what happens in the South happens in the South. And I can understand where they're coming from. I'm not saying it's right, but that's the way it unfolded. And so as we see this, African Americans now are going to have new opportunities they never had, but at the same time, they're going to start to face new problems. And this is going to be really where you're going to start to see the start of the true struggle for full civil rights and such that won't apex or come to fruition until the 1960s. And that's where we'll end today.